everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is Tracie Harris.
Howdy.
Let's see, today is Sunday, November 23rd, 2014. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We're available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. You can provide feedback by commenting on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/axp. You can email us at tv@atheistcommunity.org, and you can check us out on YouTube or Atheist TV, the Roku channel. If you enjoy this show, you should also check out our related podcast, The Nonprofits, currently airing on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. You can find links at the Atheist Experience website, and the next Nonprofits episode will be live at the ACA building on December 3rd, 2014. As always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience is going to be going to dinner after the show at El Arroyo, 1624 West 5th Street. Will arrive around 6 p.m. and guests are welcome. I've got a few special announcements for upcoming stuff. I'm going to be out of state next week. I'm going to be in St. Charles, Missouri. That's near St. Louis. At St. Charles Community College on Tuesday, December 2nd. I'm going to be in the SSB auditorium talking about skepticism from 6 to 8:30. So if you happen to be in the area, or more to the point, if you know any Christians who happen to be in the area, bring them along for some Q&A.
Bring it.
Yeah. Let's see. The Texas Secular Convention is happening in a few months. That's February 27th through March 1st. There's going to be a rally at the Capitol, followed by a convention at the Sheraton, which is near the Capitol. And the speakers are going to include some awesome people like Greta Christina, Annie Laurie Gaylor, Barry Lynn. The MC is going to be David Smalley. They're also going to have Jamila Bay and probably some Matt Dillahunty guy or something. So that's coming up in late February. And I think that's all I know for now. What about you?
Okay, let's see. I actually had noticed an article on the Christian Science Monitor. It was the cover story, and it's titled Interfaith America, Being Both is a Rising Trend in the U.S. And I thought it was an interesting article. It lists a number of statistics about families in the U.S. and trends in the U.S. as far as interfaith marriages and interfaith families, but it looks like there's a big spike upward in not only interfaith marriage, but in couples deciding to maintain both faiths. So they're marrying interfaith and then they're staying interfaith, and they're raising the children interfaith. And they have got now, like we were looking at this just before the show, and we were reading about like they have interfaith schools where the children can go and learn about different faiths, and a lot of these people are opting for things like that when they have kids, so that it's not an issue. The children are more likely to be thinking about their own religious views because they're being presented with like multiple and conflicting views sometimes, or the idea that that there is a theistic environment in the home, but not necessarily like a dogmatic fundamentalism that overrides the belief. So it looks like it's a trend that, if it continues, could at least increase flexibility in the minds of future generations regarding religion. And I think that there's a potential for that to be a positive thing, just because we get so many letters to the show from people in families that are fundamentalists where it's completely unacceptable for a family member to be different faiths. So what we see most of the time in our mail when someone is writing because they have a problem about coming out or telling their family that they're atheist is that you've got a family that is unified by their religion, which is what religion likes to promote, the idea that, we help bring families together. The problem is they only help bring families together when everybody is on the same page. And the moment someone steps, one toe across that line, they are rejected and hated and completely disowned.
Yeah, religion is a great social construct as long as you're part of the in-group.
Yeah, the moment you're just like,
yeah.
And so with this, what we're seeing are families where they're more likely to be more flexible and not be as dogmatic about what members do or don't believe. I will say it reminded me a little bit of a friend of mine who raised her children, exposing them to a lot of different religious ideologies, and she was telling me about that. Like they went and studied like Buddhism, and they studied Hinduism, and ultimately what I asked her was, did you ever present them with the idea that there may be like no need for a faith, that atheism is an option as well? And she hadn't. And so it's still possible that what you're looking at is the potential for the idea that you choose a religion as long as you choose a religion.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that's true, but I mean, it sounds to me like if you're growing up in a home with multiple faiths, one of the side effects is that you're probably not going to take either one of those faiths like particularly more serious than the other, which means you can't go too far into fundamentalism one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because if you if you're a fundamentalist living with, let's say, a Hasidic Jew, it's going to be pretty difficult to coexist and continue to respect each other. So I would imagine that a child raised in a home with two different faith parents is going to get kind of a weakened, watered down version of each faith. And I think that can only be good for kids ultimately deciding to be atheists. And so, that's one reason why it's incumbent among atheists with the less popular or well-known point of view to be ready to step in and say, hey, have you considered the possibility that it's all nonsense?
Right, or that there's, exactly. And they also talked about the effects, the potential effects, I guess, of people looking at marriage as more a unions for personal satisfaction as opposed to like a family rearing unit. Mm-hmm. And so that may be impacting this as well, the way that we've moved away from the idea that children are necessary in a marriage, or that children are like a reason for a marriage.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so that could have an impact, that people are thinking less in terms of how would this impact children, and they're not really taking that as seriously. There were a lot of interesting points made, like some things that I wouldn't have thought of that they brought up in the article, and it's a little bit lengthy. It's not too long. I think if you're interested in it, you could probably go down to the Christian Science Monitor, log in, look at the cover story, and probably have it read, within the half hour. So I don't think it's that bad if this is something that interests you. But I do think that it has the potential to be a positive trend in moving people away from dogmatism and fundamentalism and toward more flexible views about religious ideology.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I think we should look at this as a good thing. Does the article give any speculations about what could be causing this change? Or
they think, it's just that we have a way more diverse culture at this point. We've got people just coming in from all over the place and just mixing it up a lot more. I mean, mm-hmm. People have, there's also been like spikes in interracial marriage, for example, that have corresponded to this. So I just think people are more and more inclined. They said that at the beginning of the 20th century, it was like 1 in 10 marriages were interfaith, and now most marriages are likely to be interfaith.
Yeah, I think I would imagine that there's also something to do with the fact that meeting people from all over the world is a lot easier now. Like travel is easier, but also instant communication with people in other states is much, much easier.
Well, and one of the stats was like 28% of people said that they had switched religions, mm-hmm. and then they said that if you included the different Protestant sects as separate religions, then the number jumps to like 44% or something like that. So it's like it really spikes. So people are moving around within Protestantism a lot, and outside of Protestantism, still it's almost 30%. So I mean, people are really, really kind of, I guess, questioning and thinking about their religious views and being willing to change that. I know that, we were talking earlier, and my mother was raised Italian Catholic, my dad was Midwest Protestant, and for them, when they got married, that was a huge deal. I mean, it's just a huge, huge mess.
Right.
Of you don't do that. Nobody was happy. The Catholic family wasn't happy that the husband wasn't happy about getting married in the Catholic Church, and the Protestant family was wondering, why are you marrying this Catholic? And so it was just a big ugly mess, and it looks like today that's just not something that people are worrying about as much in at least growing trends.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like exposure to diversity is like bad for very very conservative religions. I mentioned a few times in some talks I've done that evangelical Christian Josh McDowell has been going around the country saying you got to watch out for kids' access to the internet because that's giving everybody equal access to your kids, and then it's destroying their faith.
They're seeing information.
Yeah.
And it's not good because they're finding out that what we're telling them isn't true.
Right.
Yeah, it's really painful for Josh McDowell, I'm sure, because that was the guy that, the apologist that convinced me at 15 to believe the Bible was inspired. And after I did some research at a university library, I found out it was a bunch of crap.
And that just warms my heart.
And so now, at the time I did it, there was no internet. Now there's an internet, and you can find out it's crap in 5 minutes. So you don't have to wait years and go to the university. You can actually look it up for yourself.
Or at least you can be exposed to the idea that it's crap. You
or
ultimately
the idea
decide to stick with
that
it.
maybe they're not telling you the whole story,
Right.
which is what I should say. That's what I pretty much discovered, was that what I was told was the story was part of the story, but not the whole. They left out the parts that didn't really feed into their theories so much.
Yeah, I mean, nothing beats absolute certainty out of you faster than stepping into an internet forum and saying anything at all.
Yeah. And then starting to get questions. Absolutely.
Well, that's really interesting.
It was interesting, I thought. So, little
Okay.
tidbit for today.
Today, our first caller is going to be Josh in Redwood City, California.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Josh.
Quickly, I'm an atheist. I don't actually believe in the supernatural. However, I've heard it said by the host of the show, most often Matt, but some others, that science, by definition, cannot show supernatural causation. I think this is wrong. I think this misportrays the atheist position. It makes Christians think the atheists are dogmatically opposed to it. Because the Christians here, science can never show supernatural causation, and the only way we know about the universe is science, so thus I'll never be able to show, that God exists.
If science could examine it, wouldn't it be natural?
If you want to define supernatural that way, then it's a deity.
Well, wait. How are you defining supernatural?
I don't like the terms. I try to avoid them. So how do you want to define them?
I'm not defining it. You called, right? You threw the term down, so let's hear your definition.
I'm calling in because I don't like it when the hosts say science cannot show supernatural causation, because either it's trivially true or it's false.
Okay, and I'm asking, since I'm not the host that said it, I'm asking.
I'm not either,
what
and I'm
is
still trying to decide
mean?
which way I would go on this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if it means that science, that supernatural means not examinable by science.
I don't know is that what it means?
I don't know.
Okay.
So neither of you say that, then I guess I should call in next week.
I don't really know what supernatural is.
That's the problem with a lot of terms like supernatural and spiritual and stuff, that people define it in these vague ways to be outside of the realm of examination. And, when they define it that way, when they say, people sometimes tell us, oh, you can't examine this thing because it's supernatural. It's hard to argue with because we can't get them to nail down a definition a lot of the times. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen Tracie be on and somebody says the word spiritual to her.
Yeah.
And Tracie is always like, what in the world are you talking about? And
no, I completely agree.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing with you. I think that I probably would agree with you. I think it's a different way of handling the question. I would say that I agree with you. I agree with you that when these terms are thrown down, they should not be accepted at face value, and they need to be defined. And the definition that's given to you should not be accepted unless it is something that makes coherent sense and can be demonstrated in some way. If you can't demonstrate it, you can't show me what you're talking about, you can't explain a coherent definition of what you're talking about, like saying to me outside of nature, my question then is, what is that? What does that mean? So when they throw down a definition that fails, it's called a failure to elucidate, that fails to actually explain what they're talking about, they're just simply using more words to tell me nothing, That is not really helping, that's not defining it, and that's not acceptable as a definition. They need to nail it down to something that we know what they're pointing at. And if they can't explain what they're pointing at, then they don't know what they're talking about, and I can't have a conversation that makes sense because we don't know what we're talking about. And I think that what happens sometimes, and we probably are guilty of this, and honestly, even though I look at it this way, you could probably go back and find me talking about supernatural stuff on past shows. I wouldn't sit here and say I never have. But sometimes those definitions are so commonly used, they get thrown down, and the hosts, like I think a lot of people, tend to sort of accept it without questioning it just because this is a live show. And sometimes we don't think on the fly as well as we should. So it is possible that a host goes forward with somebody basically saying God, and we don't stop and question it, and we just start having the conversation, and later that makes problems. So yes, we probably are guilty of agreeing to a term without having it properly defined, and it probably did lead to some weird stuff. So I think you probably have a valid point with what you're talking about.
Maybe. I mean, I would have to go back and see the actual show and then, like, discuss it with whoever said it. And, I mean, if it was me, I still might not agree with me.
But there's been times I've accepted. There's been times I have accepted words that were thrown down that I should not have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I guess we're in agreement. I might have to call back next week or so.
Probably.
Yeah, I would say I think that's the case.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling.
Sure.
Bye. Kristy, also in California. Kristy?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I live next by a Christian neighbor, and she can't stand me for the fact that I'm an atheist. You know what I mean?
I definitely know what you mean.
And she thinks I'm anti-American and this and that. I said, what makes you think just because I don't subscribe to your religious beliefs that I'm anti-American? You know what I mean?
This is your neighbor?
My neighbor, yeah.
Okay.
I would not hang out with that neighbor very much.
I don't talk to her.
Okay.
All right.
That's all you can do. I mean,
not anymore, but apparently she found out you were atheist, right? So you had to have talked to her.
Well, because I told her 20 years ago, and maybe
she's holding that grudge. Yeah.
I
told
mean,
20 years ago, I said, that book you hold in your hand is a load of shit.
Okay.
ooh.
And she didn't like that for some reason.
I had a neighbor
I
10
told
years
her,
ago.
What do you get out of reading that crap for? Well, it's the word of God. I said, so imaginary man wrote a book?
So this is a strained relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are ways to approach Christians that don't come off as immediately hostile and condescending and might not cause 20 years of aggression, but it's up to you whether you care. Whether
Who lives
And
next to
I
you.
don't care. I mean,
Right.
and I told people this. I went to Harvard. I know about the pagans, and they're more than 10 times more fucked up than the Christians are, you know?
Okay.
Okay.
You know, and I mean, you think the Christians bad, hang out with some of these pagans. They're worse yet, you know what I mean?
I mean, it depends what you mean by worse. But
Who's worse?
Pagans?
Pagans.
Oh.
Right.
Oh. They're certainly
They're-
different.
I mean, everybody is annoying in their own way,
But that's
including
what I'm saying,
atheists.
knock it off with the damn fairy tales, you know what I mean? Knock it off.
Okay.
You know, why do you-
Well, you don't
why
talk
do you
to her
have to
now,
believe-
so I guess the mission
Why do you have
accomplished.
to believe in some sort of a deity to be a good person? Can't you just be a good person because you want to be?
Yeah.
Does this person influence your other neighbors in any way?
No, she doesn't like me because she knows my mom's a devout Christian and I'm not.
Okay.
You know, I told you, I said, if I don't believe in something, I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? Where's
Sure.
the proof? Does it exist? Can you see God? Can you hear Him? Does it apply to the five senses?
I know
well,
what
no,
you mean.
Yeah.
then it doesn't exist. That's the way I look at it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like this person is a minor irritant in your life, and
You know, and I
avoiding
told
contact
you, I
is
said,
the right
there's
thing
a
to
God,
do.
and He's so powerful and almighty. Why doesn't He fix my damn kidneys then? I've been having issues with my kids for the past 7 years now. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, Kristy, I hope your kidneys get better.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
calling.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye. Dan in Buffalo, New York.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I'll get to my point real quick. But real quick, I looked up supernatural. The first definition I found was of a manifestation or event attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you take that definition,
But what
where
does
it
that
says
mean?
by definition beyond the
Right.
understanding of science,
I
then
have
yes,
no
it
idea
is
what that
beyond
I mean,
the
it's like
understanding
but
of
I don't know what
science.
it even means. Like, I don't know what that would be.
I like your dice, the imaginary dice and the no dice.
Yeah.
I get that. But the reason I called was, I love watching debates. I watch them all the time on YouTube, and my favorite debater was Christopher Hitchens. And he seemed to be the only one who would actually say, do you actually believe in this stuff? A talking snake, people living a millennium, all that, junk. I started reading the Bible just recently from front, as much as I could. I couldn't get past Genesis without thinking, like, are these people, don't we have the right to say, are you guys insane? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's rude, but...
I mean, I tend to be cautious about throwing words like insane around because there are a lot of different ways that you arrive at a conclusion, and peer pressure is one of them. And even though there is no, I think, reasonable justification for believing in talking snakes, I think that growing up in an environment where everybody just tells you and accepts that this is true and you don't question it all your life can lead a sane person to accept this and just kind of gloss over the way that they might arrive at this conclusion. Now, I do think that it's a good idea to take Christopher Hitchens' tactic in some situations and go ahead and ridicule that idea that the talking snakes and the walking on water and the rising from the dead is possible. Not necessarily because you're going to change the other debater's mind and make them realize, oh, I guess I don't really believe this stuff at all, but because you want to reach the reasonable people in the audience, the ones who are not as committed and devoted to these ideas, and make them take a second look at it and say, well, that guy on stage may believe that stuff, but now that Christopher Hitchens mentions it, that is a little weird.
Yeah, I like how he would actually ask, what do you really believe that, And other people like Dawkins and anyone else, I just tend to say I want them just to throw the punch, and they don't, But I was raised in a family where both parents were Catholic. My he goes to church every week, but doesn't really talk about religion. And my mom's more, there's something out there, and I know it, and so I wasn't indoctrinated, and I could definitely see how I could be sympathetic towards people who grow up in communities of people.
The other thing is there's a large body of research on conformity that I recommend people look at because it doesn't really take much to get a human being to adopt some obviously incorrect perspectives.
Yeah.
All it takes is like a couple other people adopting that perspective and letting them know that they've adopted it. People will give incorrect answers, not trust their own judgment, do some very strange things when they're presented with other people doing it. So
take the back of the elevator if everyone else is.
Yeah, I think that, someone told me about an elevator one where people were turned the wrong way, but I personally haven't read that bit of research. The ones that I read had more to do with testing along the lines of, would you give false answers, would you, or answers that you thought were initially wrong, so people would give particular, judge the distance of, or difference in lengths of a line, what line is longest. And when you start throwing in more and more people who are planted to say that the smaller line is longer, you start getting more of the people who are not planted saying that the smaller line is longer, even though this is something you could actually see. So whether they're pressured to lie, whether they start not trusting their own judgment. And I mean, I've been in that situation where I've done something, like let's say that there's like 3 or 4 different lines at some place where I'm going and I don't know which line I need to get in. I walk into the line and I think that's the line I'm supposed to be in. And then I see another line queuing up really, and I'm like, wait, is that the line I should be in? And suddenly I start questioning, I was so sure this was the right line to be in, but now I'm seeing this other one queuing up, and now I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong line, because what are all these people? You start questioning yourself. You start to wonder if you're not maybe seeing it correctly. And that's a normal human reaction.
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky that my mom we went to church every week as kids. I have a brother and a sister. And none of us turned out to be religious at all because at 13 we were allowed to just make our own choice. And to me, Christopher Hitchens would always quote the quote, I forget how it goes, but, I'm made so I cannot believe. Mm-hmm. And that's just how I am. And I guess it never seemed realistic to me. But
well, going back to that line, just go back to the line thing. That's interesting to me because I was thinking about some mail that we get where people will write in and say, I didn't know there were other atheists. They're in these very closed off communities, and they'll say to us, I always wondered what was wrong with me. Like, I didn't see it and I couldn't believe it, and it just didn't seem to make sense to me. And I felt like I was the only person who couldn't understand it. And I just thought, instead of them thinking I'm the only right person, what they think is I'm the only person who's not smart enough to understand this, or I'm the only person who's just not seeing what's so obvious to other people. And they're in such a situation where there's such a majority of people that are, of the position of belief, that the non-believer starts to just really question their own sanity and their own capacity to judge, because they're just like, what's wrong with me? Instead of asking, is it possible that all these people are incorrect and I am correct in how I'm viewing this?
That's terrible. I mean,
yeah.
You talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean,
sure.
The whole world might, literally blow up over one country that's, I don't know, it's Israel, because these Muslims, just like you say, grow up to believe if they don't follow the faith that they're insane or they're wrong.
Yeah.
Or they'll get their head cut off.
That too.
But,
yeah.
So,
okay.
I don't know, I guess I really don't. There's a great YouTube video I just found of a 10-year-old asking a pastor. It's a bunch of kids going up and asking questions, and he asks them, if God knows what's going to happen, then why does he make people go through life? And they go, well, so they can learn for themselves. And he goes, well, what about the babies who die at birth? Where are they in heaven? Like,
right. Well, I mean, the thing is, professional speakers are trained to supply glib answers to that, but they're never going to be really good, satisfying answers on a deep level, because they are not.
They're not good at all.
They're not good examples.
And they own the dialogue. I mean, it's just like we were talking about with the other caller. When you can throw down words like God, spiritual, supernatural, and not be called out on it, because everyone is so used to hearing the terms that we just simply accept they have meaning, even though nobody knows really what they mean. We've got a point where they can throw down meaningless, incoherent responses, and everyone just nods and says, "Oh, yes, okay." Like it's meaningful.
That feeling you get when whatever, and just things that make no sense.
I agree. Okay, thanks for calling, Dan.
No, I'm done. All right.
See you later.
Have a good show, guys.
Yeah,
you too.
Have a good night.
Have a good whatever.
Make your own show and have a good one.
Start a good show. Niz in Israel. Speaking of Israel.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Very good.
Tracie, you're my favorite host. Russell, I like you too.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask and maybe discuss a bit is how people are easily emotionally offended by atheism and atheists, and how much should we accommodate their belief?
It depends on the situation. I mean, earlier I was talking to this woman who was, her neighbor was saying all sorts of horrible, insulting things to her, right? And I asked, how much do you interact with your neighbor, and how much do you care what she thinks of you? And she said, not at all. So in that case, the answer is we should not go anywhere to accommodate believers. We should just tell them, you're a jerk, get out of my life. There are a lot of situations where it's useful to maintain a good relationship with somebody. If it's a family member that you care about and would like to keep up relations. If you are a politician, let's say, and you would like to, and part of your job is persuading people to actually adopt policies that are going to do things that help people, then it's in your interest to not go out of your way to yell at everybody and blow up at them.
If you're a minor.
If you're a minor
Yes.
whose livelihood depends on your parents, on some amount of goodwill from your parents, then you should be intelligent about the way you present yourself, because atheists, by and large, don't believe in martyrs, and we don't think that, if a situation like convert or die comes up, that it's necessarily in your best interest to die.
It always gets to that point where if you don't believe in something, that it doesn't help you to do something. But if what you're doing is the opposite of what a theist believes in, that it offends him.
Right.
So,
I don't particularly worry about not offending people just for the sake of getting along with everybody, because I can't get along with everybody. All relationships with other people are voluntary to some extent, and if they don't like me, then they don't like me.
I'll give you maybe my best example.
Sure.
I recently got married, and in Israel, you have to get married by religious law. It means you have to get a rabbi, and you have to go through the whole shenanigans of the Jewish people in order to get married in Israel. Now, if you want, you can go to a different country, get married there civically, and then get back to Israel and register as a married couple.
Are you saying they don't have secular marriage ceremonies at all in Israel that are legally recognized?
Yeah.
They have only if you're not Jewish, and if you're maybe a Muslim marrying a Christian, or something like that, or some of the people who can't get married by Jewish law. If they're I don't know, a Kohen, and they need to get married with a divorced woman or something like that. But if you're Jewish, you have to get married in a Jewish way.
Yeah, I've heard
That's really
complaints about
interesting.
this
And,
before.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty oppressive. I don't think we would or should tolerate that over here, which is another reason why I say, no, we shouldn't just let Christians have the word marriage and protect the version of marriage that they think is right, because I think that marriage very much is a legal process,
Yes.
that, that it's important to have secular versions of it. I mean, it's a rough call, because in some ways Israel is a very progressive first world country, and in other ways it's kind of a theocracy.
Yeah, I'm claiming that it's more of a theocracy because we have a Jewish courtroom. But a friend of mine said that they can claim that we're more of a democracy because we have a secular courtroom. So, but
It's complicated.
And even it gets better, because if you got married in a secular way in another country, you have to get divorced in that Jewish court. So you can't escape Judaism in Israel.
Huh.
It is very
isn't it?
annoying.
I mean, I've heard that like 20% of Israeli Jews are actually atheist. Does that sound right to you?
I don't think they're 20%, maybe less, but there are a lot of people who don't really believe in God, I think, but they more celebrate holidays and
Sure,
and stuff like that.
traditional,
Right.
cultural, yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
We
it's
have
more
that
of a
here.
cultural thing, because Jewish people, it's like nationality and the belief and culture, and everything is mixed together. Well, at least in Christianity, you can eat bacon and you can drive on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Um,
And,
Useful.
Yeah.
one more
Driving
thing I
is
wanted to ask about is what's your opinion about? I heard some lecture by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said that of the elite scientists are believers. And he said that was the critical information about that survey they did, because how can such elite scientists get to still hold their belief in God and stuff like that?
You're talking about the National Academy of Sciences. That's the number I see thrown around all the time, that only 7% of them.
I think so.
Right.
He said that about 40% of the first degree, like BA, MA, all those, they still believe, and as long as
I think
maybe
it might
know
even
that.
be 40% the other way. Like, I think maybe 60% are believers, but I'm not sure about that off the top of my head.
The point is, it goes down as long as you go up the academic ladder. But
Well, in
even
sciences,
as the elite scientists,
Yeah.
it's still 8%.
yeah. That is true, and while it could be taken as kind of an argument for authority, I also think that it's, it jibes with what I tend to believe, that the more educated you get in science, the less use you see for the God hypothesis, basically. I've also heard that a survey among philosophers, and, Christian apologists love to throw around philosophers, but and say, well, philosophers have proven God exists. And the interesting thing is that when you poll philosophers, actually a very small number of philosophy PhDs wind up holding with the position that a God exists also. So it's interesting to know about.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
thank you very much.
yeah, I don't have a solid answer for your question about how much to
No, I
offend
know
people.
it's hard, because in Israel you get to meet theist people all the time. When you go out, you need to pick a restaurant that they can eat in. You don't want to offend your parents, your friends, well, at least most of my friends are atheists, so I'm
Well, that's
covered on
good.
that end. Yeah.
All right.
Well, this is here in Israel. It's 1:00 at a.m. So
Oh, wow.
I just
Get some sleep,
I stayed
Nez.
awake
Okay.
just to get to your show.
That's
I hear you
dedication.
every day on the way to work. So in 5 hours, I'm going to work, and I'm going to hear the show, the last
Okay.
one. And thank you very much, and you're doing
All
a
right.
great
All right,
job.
thank you
and
for your
I
call.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dan in Michigan.
Hey guys,
Hi,
Hey,
Dan.
Dan.
how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Cool. So I'm a theist, but I'm kind of in the middle of kind of questioning my beliefs and everything.
We've had a few email exchanges about
yeah,
Jehovah's
exactly.
Witnesses.
So one issue I've been kind of having is in my attempts of, going to the websites. I go to your guys' wiki. I go to the Rational one, the
Sure.
Infidels, I believe.
Yeah,
And one issue
ironchariots.org is ours.
Yeah. I've been having the problem feeling like it's more cynicism than skepticism. And it's been something that's been, and I know that there's issues where I don't want to let go of my beliefs. I have cognitive dissonance like everyone, but I sometimes just think, okay, this is someone that is just, it's like, it reminds me of my sister when there was a girl she didn't like, and it was like, did you hear what she said and how she said it? And I just remember thinking, whatever, you know what I mean? You're just being a catty girl right now, and I just want to get your guys' thought on that.
On your sister?
No.
So yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like when I read, okay, like for example, the Skeptic's Annotated Bible about contradictions in the scriptures. So many of them I just read and I go, okay, come on, like are you really reading these in context? because they're just they
yeah,
seem like,
okay. No, I understand.
like petty.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, so what you're
Yeah, yeah.
saying is that you'll look up these, like there'll be something like you want to look up slavery in the Bible, and you'll get like
Right.
3 or 4 instances that are solid, and then you get like a few that when you go and read the context a little bit more, you think they're stretching it. Right? It's like, wait a minute,
Well,
that's not
okay,
quite, that's not quite slavery, or that's not quite. Yeah, and I've seen that myself. I do think sometimes the examples are not what I would call solid, and I think that's fair when that happens for anybody, theist or atheist, to call that out, to basically say, when you're going to give, like for example, if I were advising like an atheist who was going to use that source, right, I wouldn't advise them to go in and just copy paste all those examples. I would say you're going to have to go in there, you're going to have to look at those examples, you're going to have to check them, and if you want to use them, you're going to have to know that they're solid before you put them in, because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to hand this argument or this example of something that you think is atrocious that's in the Bible over to your theist buddy that you're debating, and they're going to come right back and tell you that you didn't read it.
Yeah.
And you're going to look bad because you're going to go in and read it and see that they're correct, that it was a bad example. Yeah.
I recently heard Matt, I believe it was Matt, speaking about the provision in the Old Testament where when the slave was to be freed in the 7th year, that there was a provision that he could become a lifelong slave. And the way he was saying is, here's a loophole so that you can keep someone back under your control. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that it's slavery in the context that.
Well, I mean, hang on. You realize that the loophole that Matt was talking about is that they can actually hold your family hostage when they set you free.
But can I finish my point first about that? So I personally, I know the word slave is used and everything, but I don't view it as slavery when it's a completely different time. People. They couldn't go work at Best Buy. They couldn't go work at McDonald's. Like, agriculture was pretty much the main form of work for anyone. So when they got into debt and they had to go into what's used or called slavery, it wasn't the same as slavery where
wait.
Put you on a
you
boat
could beat the person. You could beat them. Do not tell me that this is not slavery when the person who, quote, owns you can take you out and beat you near to death. And if you don't die in 2 or 3 days, if I die a week later from the injuries, he's not even guilty of a crime. That's not slavery? How much more could you own someone than being able to legally go out and beat them? You can't even do that to a dog.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I've had that issue when I read these, and that's the kind of stuff that makes me.
That is owning a person. I mean, I don't know how much more you could own a person. You could have sex with these slaves. I mean, this is owning a person.
But if someone was harshly dealt with their slave owner, and the 7th year comes. What keeps them from sticking around, and why is it? Well, that's a loophole.
Well, not 7th year if they've already agreed to be a slave for life, and there are no more loopholes left, and then they get beaten. What recourse do they actually have under this law?
Because the law says if they actually love their master and they want to reside with their master forever, them and their household, that they make that decision, not the master.
Do you really think that it is okay to have an institution that allows a person to own another person up to the point that they can lay hands on them and beat them near to death?
Them.
Yeah, or basically have sex with them. That you should be able to do that with a person, whether they consent or not.
I don't know where the rape reference comes from, but
it's having sex with your slave who cannot refuse. I mean, that would be, I can see how somebody that's into the Bible might not call that a rape, but that is a rape. I mean, when you have sex with someone who is not allowed to refuse you, that's rape.
I guess this is my overall point is you just can't say that, like, you know exactly the context of that day and age. And when the scripture says it's the slave's choice, it's their choice if they love their master.
After so many years. But they are still owned to the point that you can, I mean, I cannot even believe that I'm having a phone call with somebody who thinks that it's all right to have an institution where I am legally allowed to beat a person near to death or have sex with them without their consent if within 7 years we ask them if they want to stay with me. How is this acceptable?
My
hang
point
on,
is
Dan. Dan, you're not arguing that this institution would be okay to bring back now in modern society, right?
Why not?
Because for starters, we live in a different world. Like I said.
What does that mean? Transactions are transactions. Business is business. Human beings are human beings. I don't know what you mean it's a different world. We still do business today.
I kind of think that the
should
fact that
should my employer be able to come and beat me if they don't like the job that I do?
Well, can I clarify my position then?
I just want to say that I kind of think that the fact that this used to be considered okay and now because it's a different world, it's not okay, implies that the biblical moral code, at least that particular part of it, even if you're going to sit here and argue that it was once okay, which I wouldn't agree with you, but even if you were going to take that position, you're taking a point of view saying we've outgrown that stuff. The stuff that used to be considered moral in the Bible makes no sense given modern sensibilities, that anybody who would try to get their morality from the Bible today has to go to great lengths to reconcile that. I mean, you can't just straight up say the Bible is the source of all morality without confronting that issue. Can we agree on that?
I see what you're saying, but I still think like Tracie's saying, I cannot believe I'm talking to someone that says it's okay to beat someone.
Well, I'm with her.
I haven't said that. What I said was, when I read scriptures like that, I do think to myself, okay, now that's where I start like.
Yeah, but you're saying this isn't
myself.
Slavery, and I'm saying if you have the legal right to beat the person up,
well, okay,
how do you say that isn't a slave?
Because I'm saying, okay, let's use the example. Let's just take the beating out of the situation.
Why? It's part of it. It's a very big part of it. You own the body. You own their body.
I still think that what you guys call slavery and basically equate it as the slavery that we're used to, are you okay? But
wait a second. If you're simply saying that there are different forms of slavery, fine. But to say that I can own a human being and beat them and the law protects me as the owner, and I can beat them, and if they die within a week, I haven't committed a crime because that was my property, that is slavery. I don't care if it was the same slavery that we had in the U.S. South. The slavery we had in the U.S. South, to be honest, was based on the biblical model, but that changed later, in fact, because of some lawsuits that caused some changes. So, for example, it used to be in early slavery here in the U.S., for example, if the slave was fathered by the master, it was considered not to be a slave. The offspring was considered not to be slave because that's how the biblical model was set up. But we then changed that here in the U.S. because that was a problem, right? You don't want your offspring with the slaves to not be your slaves. So they changed that around a little bit. And so we developed a different form of slavery. I agree, our laws were slightly different. But when you have a person that is in your, quote, employ, that you are allowed to beat literally to death, that is a slave.
And I don't think that's right, honestly. I don't.
But you can't say that's not slavery. How do you say that's not slavery?
Because, okay, just take this with a grain of salt, but I believe that if the God of the Old Testament is true, which I know you guys would scoff of that, but if that God is true, then the law was written in relative perfection. What I mean by relative perfection is it was written for imperfect people.
Relative perfection seems to be kind of an oxymoron.
We are the same people, right? We're human beings.
No, the world is 100% different.
I'm not talking about the world. I'm talking about people, okay? We are not significantly evolved to the point that we are different species from what existed then. There is no reason that a God could not explain to people back then, you don't beat somebody else to death, right? There is no reason that they would be incapable of grasping a law like that. People that could be killed for having homosexual sex because of the law could definitely be told you're not allowed to beat people, right? They can understand that. Don't tell me they could not understand that rule.
Well, and I know you don't agree with the rule, but
They could understand the rule. They were not so imperfect they could not understand don't beat people.
I know what you're saying, and I totally get it. But like again, going back.
Do you think it's correct? Do you think that they could understand a law that said don't beat people who work for you? Do you think they were that clueless that they couldn't understand that?
I see that's. But then I'm saying then I'm putting. If I say yes, I agree with you. Then I'm putting the. I'm saying that like putting the burden of proof on myself, saying, well, then there was no justification.
I'm not worried about that.
Damn.
I'm just looking at this one point. Do you believe that the Hebrews in that day and age, that the Hebrews thousands of years ago would understand a rule that said, do not beat another human being that works for you? That's all I'm asking.
They would understand that, but what I'm saying is it possible that there was some moral justification for having a regulation where
Dan, I'm going to take a step. Give me a minute to take a step back and talk about morality in general. I think religion, the problem with religion, and Jehovah's Witnesses in particular have a whole host of things that I object to. We already talked about the blood transfusion issue, and you didn't agree with that either. But I think when you're dealing with religion in general, it relies on the notion that there's this ultimate lawgiver who hands down things by fiat without reason. And the reason that I feel like you're twisting yourself in knots to defend this thing as not really slavery, which I think if it wasn't your religion, you wouldn't be doing. You would take a look at this other book. Let's say the Quran said something that sounded terrible. You probably wouldn't go out of your way to defend the Quran and say, well, maybe if we look at it in the context of 9th century
like marrying a 9-year-old.
Middle East.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't really bad.
I believe
I'm saying that
original...
what we object to overall is the assumption that you should take on faith this one source and do whatever you can to believe it and justify it, instead of taking a step back and saying, what are the reasons that I think this thing is moral and not moral? What would the consequences be of acting one way instead of another? And try to figure out what your goals are with morality, whether it's helping people have a good life or whatever. And saying, how does this action advance or not advance my particular goals? Because I think that when you're dealing with secular morality, the fact that it said something, that it said to act a certain way in a particular book doesn't matter. You don't have to fight for it.
Yeah.
You can just take things on a case-by-case basis and decide based on principles what's right or not.
But I believe that like we've digressed from my original point too, where let's say I'm living in Israel, I'm a slave, and I have a master that beats me for just about anything, and he loves the fact that he can beat me. Well, come the year that
I
my
don't
debt
care.
has been paid,
I don't care about. I don't care. Look, Dan, I don't care about your justifications and your ways of trying to find excuses for the Bible. I'm saying, to me, the Bible, what the Bible has to say about morality is irrelevant. It's not useful today. Arguably, I'm agreeing with Tracie that it wasn't really a good moral system then, but it's definitely not a good moral system today. And dealing with, like, trying to hold on to your faith now and trying to reconcile this stuff, I don't think is really progressing you towards a better understanding of the way the world works or the way that you really ought to behave as a modern person.
Okay, but so can we answer the question though? Like,
no, because I don't care.
Cynicism though, but is cynicism the same as skepticism?
No.
So do you at least see that I'm saying like there is a lot of cynicism when it comes to what is called skepticism on
Well,
on these
I don't necessarily see it as cynicism.
I don't either. I don't know how that's even
I think it
related.
can appear to be cynicism if it is undermining or dismissing things that you've taken seriously in your whole life.
Beat people.
I do too.
Right? I don't think that's cynical at all. I think it's cynical to try to excuse beating people.
Okay, but then answer my question. That scripture never says that you refer to. Never says it as a loophole, but you take it as a loophole. You say, well, here's a good loophole so that...
Right, because what they're saying is you can leave, but you have to leave your wife and kids behind. And a lot of people would not be willing to do that. So, yes, that would be a loophole that allows you to coerce this person to stay. If you're holding their family hostage, how do you not call that like a coercive system? You're being coerced. That's a loophole. You're forcing this person to stay. If I've got your family hostage and tell you to do something, do you think you did it of your own free will, or do you think I forced you? Of course I forced you. The law is not going to look at it.
I know what you're saying. I agree with what you guys are saying.
It absolutely is a loophole. It is a way to force a person to stay even though they would want to leave. Like you said, if your master beats you all the time and you would normally leave, but you know that you have to leave your wife and children there, you might not leave, right?
Despite the beating.
So it is a loophole that allows you marry him off, you give him a family, and then you tell him if you don't stay, you have to give up your family. That's a pretty big give up.
Okay, right? So it's just so it seems like at least though the only thing that I think that we've agreed on is that there are instances though where maybe there is a stretch to show like here's a contradiction or here's something. Yeah,
I've seen really bad examples of people that are saying this is a contradiction, and I look at it and I'm like, no, it's not.
I agree.
You didn't think it through.
And atheists,
so, yeah,
I think that more important than dismissing religion and promoting atheism, I feel like what is the most important is that people exercise good critical thinking and skepticism and think about why they believe things instead of just taking them at face value. And I think sometimes atheists do have favorite sources that they will accept at face value and not think too hard about them, and they will wind up being embarrassed when those things turn out to be provably wrong. And atheists should not do that any more than Christians or Jehovah's Witnesses should do that. So we are in agreement there. You're right.
Okay. Yep. So what do you guys recommend to deal with cognitive dissonance and like compartmentalization and
when
the like?
You recognize it's happening, you have to think it through. You have to look at what you're looking at. And
Dan, we're out of time, but I'll talk to you some other time. There is no show next Sunday because it's the 5th Sunday of the week. Sorry, guys. I'll see you, Missouri people, and thank you, Tracie.
That was fun. I got all riled.
All right.
Good atheist, bad atheist today.
That's right.
That was our routine.
I can't hold her back. All right, bye. See you next week. El Arroyo.
Oh, that's right.
I always do that.
Atheist, bad atheist. I like that.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was great.
So
we got
some people left on the line.
Okay,
Yeah, Sanjib in Madison, Wisconsin.
You there?
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
drives me nuts during this
What?
slavery thing. You know, women never get to go free. You realize that, don't you?
That is true.
And that's something that
Yeah.
you should mention because women never, ever, ever, there is no provision for women to ever go free.
But back then they were just women.
That's
Yeah,
because they were just women.
they're
Right,
property.
exactly.
I mean,
I wouldn't
They're
want to
just
ask
property.
these people.
That's
Okay, so he gets the.
sorry, Sanjib, just a minute. We got studio
and then,
people
the
wanting to
next
rant.
week, there's a
But anyway, it was a good
plague
show.
or something, and the wife and kids die.
Yeah.
Okay,
And now
is it
he's
still-
play.
Is there a clause in the contract?
Probably not.
Probably
So what
not.
is Sanjib?
All right,
Is it your
Sanjib,
point?
what's up?
Or he just changes his mind?
I don't know.
What?
Speaking at UC on the 2nd.
No, St. Charles Community College in Missouri.
Okay, Sanjib,
Okay.
we apologize. Please go
Sanjib.
ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I think the last caller was the best example of an intellectually dishonest person. He's definitely smart enough to understand the problems, but he's not ready to accept that.
Yeah, I would say not necessarily dishonest, but like he was describing, cognitive dissonance. I think he's on the verge of understanding there's a problem there, and he just hasn't quite tweaked it. You know what I mean? I think he's almost there.
I think instead of talking to you, I think he needs to talk to himself.
Good advice.
Okay,
Right.
Okay, so my question is about the definition of science. Usually in the debates I see between the atheists and theists, that often the believers say that science has also been wrong, and and atheists accept that, they concede to this thing, which I think is wrong, because if you look at the definition of science in Wikipedia, it says that science is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the universe, which is a very good definition. But also it adds, in an older and closely related meaning, science also refers to a body of knowledge itself. I have a problem with this. Science shouldn't be seen as the knowledge that the science has gathered, because there may be some incorrect knowledge there, like Stephen Hawking said that there is black hole. Now he says that probably black hole is not black enough, it's gray hole. So these are just the human mistakes. These are the mistakes, mathematical mistakes that we are making.
Yeah, well,
that doesn't mean that the mathematics itself is
I mean, Sanjib, just if I could interrupt you, I think we understand what you're saying. Science is a progressive endeavor. So as we gain more knowledge, the models become more robust and they become more accurate, hopefully. And it is science, in fact, that corrects its own models. So when science does have something that is not quite complete or maybe not quite correct, it is generally, in fact, as far as I know, it's always science that then corrects for that, or that finds the new information that says that here is what more we needed to know in order to make this a more complete model. And yes, you're right. They're building models that are explanations based on current information, and so it would be kind of silly to expect science to be correct about everything. If I believe science was correct about everything at this point, I wouldn't see the point to doing more science, right? So, so yes, I think I agree with your point. Whether somebody wants to phrase it as science has been wrong, or if they simply want to say that science has built incomplete models that were made more complete later or that were corrected for later as we got better information, I think that might be a better way to describe it. Would you agree?
I would like to say that if somebody says that science has been wrong, I would say that no, we have been wrong using scientific methods.
I mean, I would add that there is a sense in which that is right, actually, because even though science definitely is a process, one of the issues of science is gaining a lot of background knowledge from what is basically the current scientific consensus. And I think you can't fully appreciate the way that science is a self-correcting mechanism without accepting the fact that there have been times when the prevailing scientific models of things were overturned, like, for instance, Newtonian physics getting gradually replaced with, with Einstein's theory of what?
Was it relativity?
Relativity and quantum mechanics. I mean, they're one of them deals with big, vast things, and one of them deals with small things, but. But, I mean, I think saying science was wrong is kind of a colloquialism, but it is the case that that the body of scientific knowledge that we have at any given time is our best understanding based on the scientific method, and that can turn out to be wrong in some respects.
It's all about how you define science then, and
I would it's a little nebulous, that's for sure.
The other two things that I want to say is
maybe you should save them for another week, since we're in the after show and we've got a couple of other callers to get through before.
Okay.
Before we have to leave for dinner. But thank you, Sanjib. I appreciate your question.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Brad in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, this is Brad.
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
Pretty good?
Good. I watch the show all the time. Big fan. My girlfriend and I are going to dinner with her parents in North Carolina for Thanksgiving, and they're really religious, and we're not.
Oh boy.
And we've gotten into like little debates before, and I just want to know what your suggestions are to have this dinner go over as smooth as possible. And
Don't talk about religion.
Yeah, if the subject of religion comes up, just say.
I'm not really comfortable talking about this. It's a very personal topic for me, and I would rather just not talk about it. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, you know that we disagree on this topic. I would be happy to hash it out with you privately in email or something, but this isn't really an appropriate.
It's just fine. I think it's always fine to just tell a person, I'm not comfortable talking about this with you. I'm really just not, it makes me uncomfortable. Thanks for respecting that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what would be.
And deliver it nicely, but just I'm really uncomfortable talking about this with you, and I hope you can respect that.
Right, and if this is going to work, you're going to have to strategize with your girlfriend about maintaining a united front.
There has to be a solid front. That has to be the answer as many times as that has to be the answer. Every single time it comes up, I am not comfortable talking about this. I'm sorry, I just can't talk to you about this. It makes me very uncomfortable. And you just keep saying that as many times until they stop asking.
Right, and your girlfriend, they're her parents, not yours, and ultimately she's going to be the one to make the biggest decision about how much or how little contact you're going to have with them in the future.
But just to give you an example of like a role play here, but it would be like, hey, what was the name?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. What was your name?
But my name is Brad, and her name's Caitlin.
Okay, Brad.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, Brad, we would like to talk to you about, this thing, that really, however they broach it. And you say, I'm actually not very comfortable talking about this with people. I consider it like a very personal part of my life, and I hope you can respect that. And they say, well, but if you're going to be part of our family, this is very important to us, and we'd really like to have a discussion. And you just say, again, yeah, it really makes me uncomfortable to talk about this. It's a very personal thing to me. And
have you ever watched a politician dodge a question?
They are going to keep giving you reasons why they want to talk to you about this, and you just hold that line. You hold that line. That is the only response that comes out of you.
I am doing what's best for Rochester, Pennsylvania. And I want to spend more time with my family.
You just have to be strong, and you just, because this is how you, in communication, this is how you train people to stop cycles, right? They will try to get that cycle going. They want to get that cycle going, and there's something in them that wants to have that discussion. And they're going to keep trying to have that discussion, and you just have to keep saying the same thing over and over again. It's like it's a training method.
Right.
And it only works if you're consistent. Yeah.
We agree on pretty much everything else. Anything you want to, video games, whatever.
Good, then
we
stick to topics
see eye to eye
you
on
love.
everything else except for this one topic. We just don't agree on.
Now, you don't agree with your girlfriend, or you don't agree with her parents?
No, her parents.
Okay. So you and her are on the same page.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Okay, no, that makes it better.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty straight answer. Again, I'm really a big fan. I really appreciate everything you do. I watch you guys all the time.
Cool.
And
well, hope you have a great holiday. Huh?
You too. One thing I want to ask. Matt has a tattoo on his right arm.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Do you have any idea?
Well,
it's
I know
an A. It's an atheist
he's
symbol.
got one that's an A, and then he's got one that's a Navy thing. I don't know which one you're talking about.
On his right forearm. I have to keep an eye out.
Yeah, that's probably the Navy one. I think the A is up on his shoulder.
Awesome. And if I'm ever in Austin, I'll have to come to dinner with you guys. I'd really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice night.
Yeah.
Thank
Night,
you.
you too.
Bye.
All right.
All right. Sam in New York, you're last.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, sorry. Real quick, I was just wondering, that guy that was justifying slavery, that just made my blood boil. Oh my God.
Mine too.
How could people, if God's all-knowing, I mean, if he says something one day, it's right forever, right? Isn't that
You would
what they
think.
believe?
Apparently, when he tells people, to be good Samaritans, that's for the next thousands and thousands of years. But when he tells you you can beat other people, that's just for then.
Yeah. It's better than what they were doing, blah, blah, blah. It's
All the
just
crappy
crazy.
stuff was just then. And the good stuff did happen to pan out to be like a decent idea that someone had 2,000 years ago.
Well,
yeah, that was
neighbor.
the stuff he meant
Oh my
to keep.
God, how do you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, I was wondering about fine-tuning. They say fine-tuning, and I hear these arguments like the universe exists. The universe is natural. Nature cannot create itself, therefore God created. Is that an argument that is a valid one in your eyes?
No, I mean, they're just basically saying the universe couldn't create itself, and that to me is just a bald assertion out of their ass.
How do they know that?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, you know, it also contradicts itself because they wind up, you know, saying, well, it doesn't make sense for something to not have a creator.
Well, he's saying they're using an argument that nature can't create itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
Where'd you learn that
I
from?
don't know if it can or not. I don't know what it can do. It does a lot of things that I don't understand that it does. So,
yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
I've never seen nature create itself, but I've never seen a God either.
Yeah,
so.
I've never seen God create nature, so I don't know if that happens either.
Yeah, where'd you come from? Oh, your parents. Where'd they come from? Where'd they come? Were you there? Oh my God, these are the dumbest arguments I've ever heard in my life. But that arguing for, I know you guys got to go, but that argument for slavery is just disgusting.
It was painful.
It's pretty bad.
I think, saying that I own you and I can beat you to death, but you're not my slave.
That's not the same as American slavery. I mean,
You're not my slave.
Oh my God, Marone.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of forms. There's all around the world there have been different forms of slavery. Just because, I mean, Egyptian slavery was not the same as you know, Hebrew slavery, but does that mean that it wasn't slavery in Egypt? You know, I mean, well, I guess, it's just, it's crazy. There's you can enslave people in all kinds of ways. It's still slavery.
Owning a person.
When you own a person as property, correct. That's slavery. And I don't care if you own them as property for 7 years or if you own them as property for 1 day or a lifetime. It doesn't matter. When I can beat you to death, you're my slave.
Dan, he goes, if they love their master, they can stay. No, they can. If they love their master, they can, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree.
Master, come on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Intellectually dishonest. You guys got to go to dinner.
Okay.
Watch the show before. Big fan.
Have a good evening, Sam.
All right.
All right, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys. That was fun. Thanks.